Hi, I'm Jason Gorber for thatshelf.com, and we're here at the Cannes International Film Festival. I'm walking by all the silly yachts, which seems like kind of fitting for a film about a need for speed, or at least a need for excess. The fact of the matter is that of all things, I saw Top Gun Maverick in a theater named after Enies Varda, which seems in some ways completely fitting to the sort of preposterous contradictions that take place at this festival at the best of times. Look, we've been waiting decades, some of us, for Top Gun to come back, and in many ways this was the sequel that needed this much time to actually work the way it does. It's a reflection not only obviously on the original narrative, so to speak, of the film, but also a style of filmmaking that in many ways feels archaic, a filmmaking that demands to be seen on the biggest bloody screen you can. Now, I saw it on a tent with fantastic sound, but I cannot wait to see this thing on a giant IMAX screen with the sound booming and the explosions going off and the look of intensity as Tom Cruise runs away. So yeah, in a funny way, this is an extremely conservative film, not in the sort of political party sense or even its sort of overt militaristic sense, the sort of aggrandizing. If the original was a giant bottle of homophobia and homoeroticism, excuse me, the opposite. It was a giant bundle of homoeroticism and recruitment for Navy pilots. You know, sometimes those things can go together. Certainly this one sort of echoes a lot of those sentiments, this sort of rah-rah militarism. But it's also just a reminder of just when films can actually have a little bit of emotion, a little bit of heart, and a lot of explosions and actually mean something. That it feels like that it doesn't have to be a bunch of pixels fighting each other. And that's what Tom Cruise does. Tom Cruise, at his best, at his most lunatic, puts us into the situation so that we can see the sort of veins throbbing on his head as he's pulling G's in these planes. One major improvement is the way that they've actually managed to actually capture so much of the aerial footage. It's really stunning. And there'll be tons of stuff about how it was done for real and all that stuff. But the end result truly is like cinematically amazing. You just have these senses of feeling his senses, this notion that somehow in the midst of all this chaos, you truly are in these planes as they're taking off. From the opening moments where we see that it's a Simpson Bruckheimer production. Look, Don Simpson's been dead for decades. The blong of the Harold Faltermeyer starting chord, the danger zone, all of this sort of B-roll that takes place, it's all there. It's all absolutely echoing what takes place before. And sort of for the first hour of the film, it's unapologetically nostalgic. It's like, we're doing this. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. We're going to remind you about what made the other film work. And the funny thing is, I think if you've never seen the original film, it's not like you're like desperate for it. But all the story echoes are there, and it's not simply something that traffics in nostalgia, but certainly in the sense that it demands the original film to have been seen to understand. You'll pick up the narrative pretty well. The way that the actual missions work, the way the training works, the pedagogy about teaching a younger generation to work, it's all sort of there. Now, I will say, a lot of people were skeptical about the casting of Miles Teller, and I understand that Miles Teller is a better prick. But nonetheless, he's great in this and so perfectly cast. He looks so much like Anthony in this film that it's kind of ridiculous. There's a beautiful scene that will be much talked about with key characters from the previous film. I mean, it will be spoiled all the hell to anybody who cares about such things, but just so you know that there are moments that take place using probably one of the ones that actually uses the most technology to actually pull off in terms of its audio work. But it's really, really nice to see the film sort of slow down and take these moments. And that's one of the things, like, yeah, for a big boisterous action movie, there's a lot that I felt. I'm like, oh, are we doing this? Are we actually allowing the film to just kind of settle and for us to actually feel some emotional beats and actually recognize that there's emotion in all of this stuff and simply accept it? And so, yeah, for that alone, God bless Top Gun Maverick. It does exactly what it wants to do and does it exceptionally well. It reminds about, especially after this crazy time that we've had, where we were denied the access to cinemas, just what it's like to be there with a group of people enjoying something on the big screen and just simply enjoying the spectacle when it's done well. It's smart popcorn fun, and it's as simple as that. Now, I will say the narrative borrows heavily from a gazillion films, everything from Dam Busters to The Trench Run and Star Wars. And that also feels like completely fitting and completely in keeping. As ridiculous as it is, by, again, the weird world of Top Gun, where you're never really quite sure what country we're actually fighting. In the original one, it was MiG, so at least we knew it was some Cold War sort of nonsense. This one, I guess they're Generation 5 fighters. So you're like, okay, of some rando country where the mission is completely insane. And the way that it sort of touches on relatively interesting things about drones versus actual fighter pilots. Why do we need fighter pilots in this world? Why do we need action stars in this world? Is a question that easily could be asked. Why do we need this when we can just use our general stuff, have plaster somebody in a whole bunch of makeup and CGI, and simply make them the most important character that's on the screen? Is somebody like Tom Cruise worthwhile anymore to have a gazillion dollars spent on these guys and girls occasionally, but from an era it was certainly mostly guys, to tell us these kind of storytelling? And again, it's been said before, it needs to be repeated. Tom Cruise gives every single ounce of energy back to his audience in ways that are both obnoxious and kind of beautifully poetic. He is there to say, I'm going to take you on a ride and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to watch me sort of go through it, and that's going to be part of the fun. That you're going to be invested in him as an individual, in him as the performer, and all the baggage that he comes with. He's worked with some of the greatest auteurs that have ever been behind a camera, incredible technicians, incredible people, and yet he still manages to do blockbusters in a way which frankly so few people are. One that is relatively prevalent about doing it, went and slapped somebody on the Oscars. So we'll see what actually happens with that. It's certainly a dying breed. And I did spend tiny moments sort of in the grand cacophony of the ending thinking, you know what, as ridiculous as this mission is, and we know it's going to be ridiculous, this probably would have made sense to do it unmanned. This probably would have made sense to actually do this stuff with drones. And yet, somehow the film makes us believe that it is more important when it's people. Somehow it makes us believe that, yeah, what the hell? We actually want it sort of the old school way. That's a little bit more dangerous, and it's a little bit more dark, and it's a little bit more challenging to the status quo. It takes a little bit more effort, but when it actually is said and done in the end, it's something that somehow is more rewarding. And why the hell not? So that's Top Gun Maverick. I think that you'll thoroughly enjoy it if you go in as open-eared and as open-eyed as possible. It is a total blast, a total throwback, but also something that feels incredibly contemporary, and especially for generations that have grown up with a very different kind of cinema that they've fallen in love with, for totally fine reasons. I got nothing against anything that's going on now. This is not like the old man yells at the cloud thing, but this absolutely reminds of what it was like in those summers of the 1980s to see films where shit blew up real good and you didn't feel stupid when it actually happened. That somehow it's elevated nonsense, and that's what I really loved about the way that something like a Top Gun Maverick is playing within here, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. Why not? Why the hell not? Let's celebrate all forms of cinema in all of its myriad colors. For thatshelf.com, I'm Jason Gorber. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on social media, and we will see you next movie. All the best. Take care.